folks, it's Janek Gwizdala. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. So many fun things to get to today. Is Rick Beato wrong? Can I prove Rick Beato wrong? Man, I hope so. I'm going to clarify all of that in just a minute. But we are giving away the in-ear monitors today. If you didn't check out the last episode of the podcast, I asked everyone to comment on that episode on the YouTube video to enter to win a set of these T9 in-ear monitors, these X Vives that I've been using. If you want to know why and how this is not a sponsored video, that was what the entire episode of that podcast was about. So by all means, go check that out if you want the backstory. But I'm sure most of you are here to see who won. I'm going to use a random comment picker, YouTube random comment picker by a company called pickerwinner.co. I just Googled it. That's what came up. A YouTube random comment picker with advanced features and filters. Select a comment randomly with our automatic and fair tool. I am not going to include replies because I've replied to some of the comments on there. I'm not going to allow duplicates because people are not trying to cheat or anything. People left multiple comments when they had different comments, different questions to ask. So as far as I know, it's just going to filter all the top level comments with no replies and pick a winner. Here we go. There's no fanfare. There's no sound effects, I don't think. Please wait while we load the comments. How many comments were there? There were several hundred, over 300. Were there 300 and 361 comments? I'm going to click the button to pick a winner, and it is from Larry Lefebvre 9324. Larry, you won. Larry's comment was, very interesting conversation, and thank you for your honesty and background info on products you've discussed. I've relied more on opinions from people I personally know in recent years, which often results in a long gap before I become aware of any new products. All right, well, maybe those gaps can be narrowed. You're about to be aware of these in-ear monitors. I should have figured this out beforehand, but number one, if you're watching this and you see it, reach out through the website with a screenshot of your YouTube channel or something that lets us know you are Larry, and drop us a line at the website. It's contactjanekgwizdala@gmail.com. That's the email address, and we'll get your address and ship these out to you wherever you are in the world. We'll also reply to your comment on YouTube to let you know that you won. And now we'll get into, man, can I prove Rick Beato wrong? Man, I really hope so. I've got to be really clear with this. I don't think he is wrong. This is, can I prove him wrong for me? Like for my personal journey with music, for the sake of my sanity and for all the tens of thousands of hours I've poured into doing what I love over the years, and for the age I am now, I really hope I can. Let me explain a little bit, give you some background on it. Rick posted a video. Actually, we should rewind before that because Rick had a conversation with a good friend of mine some months ago, maybe even a year ago. I don't know when it was. I just remember my friend telling me, hey, met Rick Beato when I was out on the East Coast on tour. We had this conversation, and me and my friend started discussing this topic, this subject of Rick had brought up this thing of, he considers a vast majority of famous artists, people we all know and have loved from the past, the Beatles, Zeppelin, the list is kind of endless. He goes into depth in his latest video about all of that. He kind of says that, well, I think most of their, if not all of their most successful, most popular, best stuff, all of their best stuff was done when they were in their 20s. So I heard this and I was like, oh shit, really? And I started self-inventory myself and which records did I make when I was in my 20s? Shit, I only think I made 3 for myself. I played on a shitload of others, but I think I only made 3 for myself. Mystery to Me, Live at the 55 Bar, and shit, man, maybe I only made 2 because I think the space in between was when I was already 31, perhaps. Shit, I can't remember. Anyway, when I looked at that, I was like, oh man, it really bummed me out. I was like, shit. is it all over? Then I started to look at all the albums I made in my 30s and looked at the other gigs I'd done and thinking about my playing and like, where's it? Am I not improving? Is it all just, am I like an athlete now? You get to the end of your 20s and any sort of like physical, like highly physically demanding athletic pursuit as a professional athlete, it starts to decline and people inevitably retire. And, not everyone has the visibility to come back at 58 years old like Mike Tyson for an exhibition match and make a fool of himself to make a bunch of money. So yeah, like people retire and then that's it. The kind of thing is over. So I started to make all these parallels. I'm massively into sport and have been my entire, adult life and my juniors as well, and had the option to be a professional athlete and chose music over that. So there were all these kind of parallels going on. When my friend told me about this, Beato conversation he had. Fast forward to, a couple of weeks ago or something, Rick's video ended up on my radar. I checked it out. I'm going to link it below in the description of the video. You should really check it out. It's a good 10-minute watch. And again, I'm not actually disagreeing with him on so many of the points he made. It's more, can I justify disagreeing with him for myself? Can I look at what I'm doing and, look at it objectively and say, okay, have things improved? Am I making, and what is improvement also? That comes into it. Like what constitutes something that's better or not? It's like, I guess I can't base, or if I were to make a parallel with his video, it would be more on what part of my output was the most commercially successful. When I look back on it, maybe 20 years from now, will it end up being that those first albums, Mystery to Me and Live at the 55 Bar, end up being the most played, the most heard? I think we could all probably be in agreement that I'm a jazz musician, and through streaming music over the internet, we're not really looking at financial gain when it comes to that, because it's fairly insignificant. So in terms of commercial success, maybe we'll look at it in terms of streams, coverage, views, however you want to, non-financially look at it. Will it end up being that those two albums that I made in my 20s are the ones that were the most, air quotes here, successful? I really hope not. My God. And then you got to can you separate what is what do I feel subjectively happier and better about having made? When I looked back on it, and it's not something I do often at all. I don't go back and listen to my albums, but that made me at least go look at them. Even though I didn't listen to them, perhaps I went and looked at the discography and looked at the history and tried to remember how I felt making those records, how I feel about them since, whether they've aged well, the clunkers versus the ones that I was like, oh man, we actually got to some shit there. And some of the clunkers where I'm like, shit, should I just delete that from the internet? There's that, I'm operating on, that range of spectrum. There's things that I'm immensely proud of and things I wish I'd never done. They all kind of melt down into the pot of experience and just help me make better judgment, better decisions, and maybe push me to try more and more adventurous things in the future. So yeah, I'm not taking the clunkers off the internet. You can for yourself make up your mind as to what you think those might be. Maybe comment below. It could be brutal. Give myself a public roasting, where I get you all to say yeah, you know what, that album was kind of shit. You probably shouldn't have made it. And it wouldn't surprise me, especially where I don't really engage in that kind of thing, that kind of conversation in terms of subjective stuff anymore, especially since I'm not on social media. And that's basically all social media is. So I don't ever have those conversations. But from what I remember when those kind of comments did show up on my radar, it was amazing to me how the things I felt most proud of and most fulfilled by musically were the things that people hated the most. The things that didn't get the streams, and things, I thought was super creative, and other people were like, well, why didn't you make the thing that I like about you? There's that expectation from the audience, and I don't think any of us are immune to it. We all like what we like. And sometimes it can be a stretch when your favorite artist that you love for kind of maybe one thing in particular that that attracted you to them in the first place. Maybe that artist goes and does something totally different. You're like, oh, I did have an expectation of hearing the new thing from Sting that is just like, Message in a Bottle or Canary in a Coal Mine, or whatever your, favorite Sting song is. And then when it isn't, inevitably 40 something years later, you're like, oh shit. And then you have to sort of reconcile that and maybe I know what I do. I take a step back and listen to it for what it is, like take my own ego and own expectations out of that artist's output and listen to it and sort of start from square one again. And sometimes you don't like it. It's not your thing. But sometimes you can start to see the through line and the thread and where that artist is coming from, and maybe even where they might be going in the future, or perhaps how their influences have changed, or their approach has changed, their sound or their time, or their orchestration or their arrangement or their melodic sensibility. Like all these things can change over time. And then of course you get the artists who just keep making the same record over and over again. And I find myself in a weird situation with that, because there are some of those artists I love, and I'll gladly listen to them do that thing over and over and over and over again. And I don't know why that is satisfying to listen to from certain people sometimes. Maybe it speaks to just how powerful their foundation is, how powerful their time and their sound is, that no matter what the context or framework that they put that in, I still want to listen to it. So there's a lot to reconcile there, but I know for myself that doesn't fulfill me musically. So I've always been trying to change. And when I look back on the output, I think, I can definitely see some similarities between some albums, but I've always gone into a new recording project with one of the main focuses being, I don't want to make something I've already made. Like, I just do not want to make something I've already made. I don't want to regurgitate. I don't want to think back to something that worked or something that the audience responded to really well and just go after that because I'm kind of clinging to that. I want to be able to roll the dice and be totally okay if it's not commercially successful. Pretty much everything I ever do for the rest of my life, I would imagine, if it's not commercially successful, and even if it's not received well by the audience. There's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Pat Metheny, and like one of his hated is a little it's a little strong, right? One of his least favorably received works is the Zero Tolerance for Silence record. Is that the right name? Zero Tolerance for Silence? Yeah, exactly. Zero Tolerance for Silence album, which was I'm looking it up here online, 94, released 94, recorded in 92. So he's already almost 20 years. When was Bright Size Life? 73, 72? Let's see. Bright Size Life, come on, be good. Oh, no, 75, recorded in 75 and released in 76. But he's still close to 20 years past what is maybe his biggest, best, and most recognizable album still. One of them anyway. And maybe that's someone who I can look towards for inspiration in this moment, because I feel like, and I know his music so well, I can relate to the story. I know the timeline, the history, and there are huge moments. Even if I take my extreme fandom out of the equation, there are actually huge commercial successes still later in his life. When we look at Secret Story, Pat Metheny was when was that? Was that early 90s? Wow, that was even before Zero Tolerance to Silence. Wow, so 92, and let's see, Pat Metheny was born in 54, so 92. Okay, so he was almost 40. So he's 38 in 92. So way past the Beato 20s thing. And, the Beato that talks about jazz musicians being on the slightly later side of it, but only by a few years, interestingly. He referenced a bunch of things like Miles Davis and, a bunch of legendary musicians. I think maybe he referenced Train being 38 on one of his things, but generally like not that crazily, it wasn't like, oh yeah, all the jazz musicians were in their 50s when they did their best shit. I mean, hell, most of them were dead. Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, a shitload of musicians were dead by the time they were in their 50s, so they didn't even get the chance. Some not even to see their 40s. So yeah, maybe I'll take a little bit of inspiration from Metheny, knowing that in 92, when he was, 38, Secret Story came out. I'm trying to think of some other bangers that, early on, obviously. 75, 76 for Bright Size Life is a huge one. Secret Story. If I just look down the discography, I would say, not massive hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gold certified records, but still, to me, when he did in 2000, the Trio 99 2000 with Bill Stewart and Larry Grenadier was a great, kind of almost a great throwback to the Bright Size Life years, but with this modern acoustic thing that was interesting, that was not old and tired. And, it also wasn't like, what's the record, Rejoicing, with Billy Higgins and Charlie Hayden. He did that in 84, 83, 84, something like that came out. So, early 30s there. I love that record. Maybe not commercially crazy successful. But as I looked down, and his, of course, the solo guitar, I think the solo guitar record, the first one, One Quiet Night, 2003. So he's, in 2003, he's almost 50 then. And One Quiet Night is maybe his biggest selling album. Maybe I've read that. Maybe that's totally bullshit. But it won a Grammy. And I'm just looking on the wiki page, not that tells you much about it, but I know it was a massively successful, commercially successful record. He was almost 50. So I'm looking at Metheny for hope. I'm looking at Metheny to help motivate me, I guess, and to help me prove Beato wrong for me. Not that I think Beato is wrong, and it's an interesting concept, and I've wanted to talk about it on the podcast since my friend told me about that conversation. And I was like, oh, it's a bit weird if Beato hasn't talked about it publicly, and I don't want to be like, oh, I came up with this thing, and I don't want to reference some random person. It's nice to be able to reference a really well thought out premise and concept, and very well presented in this 10-minute video. Again, it's linked in the description below. I highly recommend you checking it out, making up your own mind. Are there artists, musicians, bands on your radar, in your orbit, that you love, that you've idolized, that fall into that category? And I only saw this maybe yesterday or the day before, I think. So I haven't fully thought about all the people that prove that theory wrong. But I'm guessing even when I really sit down and take time to spend like really digging in, like how old were these people, and do the research and look up their birthdays and when things were recorded and released, that it's still going to be weighted in favor of Rick's concept, that there will be more people who did that stuff in their 20s. And I'm talking with my best friend Antonio this morning, and because he sends me this article from Consequent Sound. I'll link this as well. I'll throw this in the description of the video, and it's talking about in 2024, more musicians are making and releasing music than ever before. In fact, a new report has found that more music is released in a single day than the entire year of 1989. They cite Music Radar as the source. This cat who was a former Will Page, who was a former chief economist of Spotify. Blah blah blah. You can read the article. That's what got me and my friend talking. And then I linked him to the Beato video, which he said he had already seen. And when he clicked on it, I hadn't read any of the comments. When he clicked on it, he sent me this quote from, and I don't know who the commenter is because I'm not looking at the Beato video. I'm looking at our text thread. And he said from this cat on the Beato video, quote, "I'm a psychologist. There are two general creative periods, before 30 and after 60. At these times, there are fewer demands and better conditions for promoting creative focus and development. The dip is generally because of demands for career and financial and family stability. It's not really about intelligence. It's more about personal agency, motivation, and values. Acquired knowledge leads to the experienced mindset." End quote. Don't know who that's from. You can go check it out on Rick's video. My friend found that comment. There's probably thousands of comments, so good luck finding it. Thought that was interesting. It also aligned with that was the first thing. Part of that comment was the first thing I thought about after I read Rick's thing. I was like, yeah, it's my birthday tomorrow, for instance. I'm about to hit 46. I'm well into middle age here, and I'm far from my 20s. And it hit home. It was like, oh yeah, there's a reason I don't make an album a month. It's because I'm a husband and a father. And I think this comment about the demands are for career and financial and family stability. And, if your career is the art, then I'm not sure that really applies. But then at the same time, how many people are really making a full career from releasing music these days? For me, for instance, with the books and all the other things that are going on in my life, musically, but, work-wise, I don't just sit here and release music and make money from streaming and live shows. So, yeah, it's... when I look at that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't make an album a month as much as I would love to. I've set myself the task in order to combat this. And I've been thinking about this ever since my friend told me. It's been months, maybe even a year. It's been super depressing. But at the end, after I was like, okay, get over yourself, Gwizdala. Like, it doesn't need to be depressing. Like, you can find a solution for this depression about this concept. And my solution is to push myself even harder now when I have all those other things of husband, father, house, dog, cat, work, all those other things, touring with other people, working as a freelance musician as well as being an artist, to push myself now harder in my 40s than I ever did in my 20s as an artist. And I'm hoping that will help get some of this music out that's swimming around my brain. There's a lot of it today, but as I was talking to my friend Antonio, I was thinking to myself, man, if I had 6 weeks uninterrupted in the studio right now, I could probably put out a dozen albums. I have that much material written, conceptualized, ready to go. So there's no shortage of material. It's about managing my time a little better. I've talked about that recently on the podcast. Go back and check those episodes out. Time management for musicians. There is, but also at the same time, to get to the point, I can see how not everybody is that motivated. I can totally see it's fucking hard work. Like, it is an immense amount of mental strength needed, or fortitude, willpower. I don't know really how to explain it. These are all pretty new thoughts as I try and crystallize the concept and find out what works for me, whilst battling Rick's video and his message there. And it is interesting the way Rick puts forward, like, the amount of things we know, like, we don't even think about. We know them so well, especially if you're from my generation or older, when we're talking about the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Prince and people like that, the legendary things those artists did and the age they were in their early 20s, some of them. It's insane. Like, things I'd totally forgotten about timelines of, and how, what age these people were when all this amazing stuff happened in their lives. And I think there's also the thing of, you got to take into account the eras that we're in now, and when I think about shit, if I could get 6 weeks in the studio, like in 1 year, could I get 6 weeks in the studio? This is an unimaginable goal or task. It's unattainable financially. It's unattainable schedule-wise. It is just something so foreign to 2024 as an independently funded artist. But you don't even have to go back that far. Like the 90s, you could have been doing drum sounds for 6 weeks in the studio, funded by a record label. Yes, the era of the gatekeepers and all that stuff, but it did facilitate the environment for making some great music. Like, some great music came out of that. Now, I'm not saying you need 6 weeks to do drum sounds in a studio to make great music. There are plenty of examples of a person in room, one microphone, guitar. If you've got great songs and amazing voice, you can make great music and it can have an impact. Who was I listening to recently and being more familiar with? Hozier. Hozier, I believe he's an Irish artist, and I only briefly looked into the history and the timeline, but it seemed like he started really simple. It might even have just been a guitar and a microphone or something like that. And his biggest song has 2-point-something billion streams on YouTube in the last year or two, or however long he's been around. A very short, rapid trajectory in an upward direction. So I think it's very important to take into consideration the environments in which the Beatles were in, that Led Zeppelin were in, that some of these bands were in, that Prince is famously, 17 hours a day in his own freaking studio at Paisley Park. Who knows what he was doing early on, like late teens, early 20s, but it feels like to me when I look back on that studio time and environment were not as immediately cost prohibitive, because I don't want to ignore the fact that, yes, record labels provided all that stuff, but then you were tied to them forever and just constantly in debt if you never had a gold record or a platinum record or never had the mainstream success for every, even for me, when I moved to New York in 2000 and was touring with pop artists for 10 or 11 years straight, I saw the inner workings of the end of that, when there was still Battery Records, when there was still Jive Records with an in-house recording studio. And for every one Britney Spears, there were 250 artists that were fully signed to that label, but sitting on a shelf. And maybe they took 2 or 3 off the shelf and tried to do something with them, and they flopped. And the artists were forever in debt to the label, and never went anywhere. So I'm talking about the immediate financial, unburdening of the artist to create the thing in the first place. I'm not ignoring the long-term bullshit that record labels used to and still do put their artists through. Context and is everything there, and an awareness of all the levels is kind of everything there as well. So, but after having said all of that, I think the era is really important to take into account. There's no getting around that. And as I sit here as a completely independently funded artist, i.e., if I sell a lot of books this year, I can afford to go make a record. Or if I, reach out to my fans, as I have done for the past 2 albums, a couple of albums, One Way Out in 2022 and Night Watch in 2023, by doing a pre-sale, by bringing along any of you that were truly engaged in the music and were going to engage in it, regardless of when you did, doing a pre-sale and sort of pre-funding the album that way, giving myself an idea of what my overall budget was to do it, has been a great way. It's worked twice. I managed to put out a live album this year. I'm doing the remaster of Mystery to Me that's coming out very soon, actually, in time for the holidays. That's all completely self-funded, for instance. All the costs associated with that, the artwork, the mixing, the mastering. And yes, it was a live album, so the music was already recorded. But you still need artwork, mixing and mastering, all that stuff. Mystery to Me, I had to re-record some stuff, and then mixing, mastering, doing something special for vinyl, pressing vinyl. Those are all expenses, maybe not as much as a full production, but they fall under this completely self-funded banner. So in that sense, some of the things I would love to be doing in 2025 are, I probably have realistically 5 projects that I could record in 2025. I'm going to shoot for 3 and be really happy if I get 2 good ones that I can release. Like I'm trying not to burden myself, trying not to put too much pressure on it, but want to do 5, can do 3, will probably do 2. Let's see how that goes. Let's see how that ages in the next 6 to 9 months. But that's where I'm at. So yeah, again, context really important, and I'm looking for ways around that are not GoFundMe or Indiegogo or any of that crowdsourcing bullshit, but are actual fan engagement, direct to artist with no middle person, or that are, with the new book. And I should talk about this, but I've waited half an hour into the podcast, but it is available for pre-sale, the Bassist's book of scales and arpeggios. It is the toughest part of the process of any of the books is right now, like literally a week before the launch, because it's just proofreading, adjusting, fingering numbers so that, just making sure there's nothing out of place, making sure you haven't doubled up on something or put something in the wrong key, or you've started on the wrong string when it comes to the tab. Like there's just probably hundreds of thousands of notes in this book, being that it is a scale, arpeggio, broken chord study compendium of like almost all Western harmony. It's an insane collection of music and of components to our musical language. So yeah, it's available for pre-sale. It's linked below. It comes out literally next week, right? It's the 27th it comes out, and the pre-sale ends on the 26th. The pre-sale includes a signed physical copy and the digital PDF. We never ever do that. We haven't done it. It's a massive pain in the ass to bundle them together, but we're doing it for the pre-sale, and it's at that special price, one price for both copies of the book. That ends the 26th of November, so make sure you get on that if you want to be. If you want to get that bundle and get both copies, and then it will be out on the 27th. And yeah, it's how many albums I do next year will be dependent, partially at least, on how many of these books I sell and how well that side of the business goes. It's not 100% of it, but it is a significant. It's not. Let's say it's not an insignificant portion of my income and of the business. So it's very important that works. And the whole like mental melting pot of all of those things, and then the levels and the layers of how I feel about music and how I feel about making music, and am I being fulfilled as I do it, and is my best stuff behind me. It's has been for a while a bit of a bummer, since, like I said, since I heard that conversation, but I'm slowly sort of coming out the other side of it and finding solutions, which is really encouraging. It went from being one of the most depressing things I'd heard in a really long time to being the thing that is probably going to mean when I die, there'll be 100 or 120 albums left behind rather than 30 or 35. I think it's going to be that kind of difference. And to me, that's like, it's like practicing, right? Like there's never an end to it. The end is when I go. That's it. That's the only end, because you're never done with it. And I think this just reminded me that I'm never done with, thankfully, I'm really grateful for that. I'm never done with musical ideas. They just keep on coming. Hundreds, if not thousands, of little voice notes in the phone and scraps of paper with melodies and chord sequences written on them. Actually, books of them, not scraps of paper, but books of them, just ready to go. And yeah, let's just say I'm excited to share what's next in terms of recording in the beginning of next year. Can't really talk about it right now because it's kind of in the planning stages. I don't want to jinx any of it. But next year, there are, like I said, 5 that could be made, 3 that I'm 100% in on, 3 albums that I'm 100% in on, and I'm actively in the process of organizing and setting up and trying to find funding for and figure out how I'm going to do them, where I'm going to do them, who I'm going to do them with exactly, even though I have a basic framework of the band for each one. I'm listening to a lot of classical music to record some solo albums. I'm having Anders build me a new bass to do some of that, like a Coronado, but a Mattis. This is like a lot of layers going on with that that are really exciting when it comes to artistic output, and I can report they are very fulfilling even before they've taken place. So here's to trying to prove Rick wrong for me, even though I don't think he's wrong for the most part of what he said in his for all the artists, especially that he listed in his video. Again, go check out the video. It's linked in the description, as is the article from about all that music being released in 2024 versus 1989. And have a think about your favorite artist and when you think they did their best shit. And leave it in the comments below. I want to hear. And hopefully you expose me to some people I didn't know about as well. Don't just think I'm a jazz head and that's it. Like, I like to listen to all kinds of music. So please expose me to some of that. Some people you think are worthy of checking out, and maybe highlighting the fact that, oh man, this person was 43 when they did this ridiculously great record, In my head, right now I want to, I'm going to do it while I'm still here. Why not? Because one of my favorite singer-songwriters, oh man, we're the same age. So let's see when he did his album. One of my favorite singer-songwriters is half Argentinian, half Swedish, Jose Gonzalez, sorry. And let's see when he did his records. Veneer, 2003. Oh, 25. Okay. That was big. I love that record. Oof. Yeah, okay. So he fits in that one big time. Oh man, Veneer was such a good record. That had Heartbeats on it, and Love Stain, All You Deliver, Broken Arrows. Damn, great record. In Our Nature, still did some charting. That was in 07. Vestiges and Claws, 2017, also charted pretty well. So he had some good ones, man. Okay, Local Valley, not the craziest output. Pretty limited, actually. I thought he had way more records than that out, but that's so great example of Rick wins that one. Rick wins that round. He was 25 when he did that epic mega album that was such a huge hit worldwide. So I've just proven Rick right at the end of the podcast. God damn it. I'm going to go back to the drawing board. Maybe I'll sprinkle in some of these over the coming weeks. All right, that's it. Appreciate you guys spending some time with me. Congratulations to Larry Lefebvre 9324 will be reaching out. You can reach out too if you hear this first. We'll get these out to you. Congratulations. I think you're really going to enjoy them. That's it. See you cats on the next one.